everybody. We are the Good Doctors of Heavy Research, as ever, Dr. Erin.
Dr. Kristen.
And welcome to our final video for Black History Month. We realize it is no longer Black History Month, but that's great because we celebrate Black history all the time, and we try to. We had a little bit of a delay while we were traveling during the month of February, so hence this video is appearing in March, but you'll bear with us, right? Right. So for our last video, we want to cover a theme that we've seen occurring more often in films that are telling stories about Black lives and Black experiences, and that is the theme and idea around criminal justice and criminal injustice.
Yes.
Most specifically that we've seen recently in last year's epic Netflix miniseries by resident goddess and one of my heroes, Ava DuVernay, When They See Us, which if you haven't seen it, please watch it. I believe it should be required viewing. It's also very emotionally upsetting. But it covers the story of the wrongfully incarcerated men who were accused of raping a woman in Central Park in the late 80s, I think. Yeah.
You may have heard of them as the Central Park Five. That was their slang.
Previously.
So that's who we're talking about, the ones that Donald Trump took out a full-page ad and kind of rabble-roused,
claiming the need for capital punishment again.
Yeah, that's that famous case.
Famous case.
Yeah.
So they were all wrongfully convicted and coerced into, a lot of them coerced into admitting guilt. And they were all served sentences between 6 and 11 years in prison, and were all released towards the late 90s and early 2000s when new DNA evidence exonerated them. So you will see a lot of discourse if you look for it online, calling them the Exonerated Five, which is a much happier moniker, although less well known than the Central Park Five. So it chronicles the story of what happened to them and When They See Us, and how all the different parts of the criminal justice system are in a way organized to oppress people of color, and especially, particularly at this time in history, Black men. And so we're seeing this theme a lot in other pop culture movies that are coming out. So we thought it would be a good chance to just have a chat about some of the ones we have seen and the ones we haven't seen, and recommend them all to you. Literally all.
Because even if it's not perfectly done, usually these stories tell us something that we haven't known before. Not only as humans, but as particularly for those of us, the viewers that are American, this is our narrative as well. One of the first that I'd personally recommend is a movie that was very quietly released several years back called Marshall, which is not to be confused with We Are Marshall.
Yes, very different film.
Very different film. Similar era of history, very different film. So Marshall tells the story of Thurgood Marshall, who was the first Black Supreme Court justice and a lion of justice in this country.
Yeah, and a lawyer for the NAACP
at the time
of the movie. Yeah,
it stars Chadwick Boseman and Josh Gad and
Sterling K. Brown.
And Kate Hudson in a very brave performance.
Oof,
no one. She is the villain. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
From history, but it is a stunningly quiet and yet insistent piece of art that we would really recommend. It is on the spectrum of these that we're going to talk to, one of the less emotional ones. So if you're looking for a toe dip into the water,
yeah,
we'd recommend starting with Marshall.
If you're looking at the shallow end,
then maybe head to Selma.
Yeah, Selma would be a great one. Also by Ava DuVernay, covering the Civil Rights March in Selma.
And then after that, we start to get into, and very quickly, we can't lie, into the stuff that requires the tough sit moniker.
And whatever sort of emotional support you need to watch difficult things, be it alcohol or candy or
snuggles with a puppy, pick a thing.
Aromatherapy candles, whatever it is that helps you feel safe and secure, grab those things before you watch a lot of the movies that have been made more recently. And I think within the broader context of the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, we're having a lot of more discussions about broader issues of criminal injustice.
Yeah.
So we had the movie Fruitvale Station, which I have not seen, but you saw, right? Yes. With our beloved Michael B. Jordan, which
about a murder at Fruitvale train station in
Los Angeles, which is effectively, you know, a placeholder for all the stories of young Black men killed by police officers in scenarios like this. So we get Fruitvale Station. We get, if you want to be like the deepest of the deep end, I think, because we just watched it recently and we'll be talking about it again in a few weeks, the documentary 13th, which is about the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, with the caveat, unless you were convicted of a crime, unless you were a criminal. Technically, guess what, kids? Slavery is still legal as long as you're a criminal. And that covers like the broad expanse of American history. Like, we'll get into it later this month and you'll see our thoughts on it as a review. But that is the very deepest end of this conversation about what the criminal justice system does to Black bodies.
And there's realms within that. If Beale Street Could Talk is another really important piece of cinema that we'd recommend. But on documentaries, there's a growing legion as well. There's one that tells the story of Khalif Browder. There's a couple others that are just, we are getting more stories. You know, one of the things that Ava talks about we're close personal friends.
We talk to Ava all the time.
One of the things that Deity DuVernay talks about is that the streaming services that have democratized storytelling in a way that is heretofore unknown.
Yeah.
The printing press democratized storytelling, television democratized it. We just kept going. And so now this new phase is the streaming services, and we can get art and documentaries and thoughts and stories from all over the show, and it has just blown up the potential for stories that we haven't heard. For instance, later this year on, I believe HBO, but HBO is streaming as well, is going to be the story of Madam C.J. Walker, who is the founder of Black hair care in the United States. Madam is not her birth name. It's an honorarium, and it's starring Octavia Spencer. And this has been rumored for years. I cannot wait. I've read a couple books on Madam Walker, but I can't wait to see its embodied story. And there's millions more like that as well, so that we get to tell the happy stories, but we also really do get to dive into reality, both through fiction and through prose. If you are not a documentary person, we respect that. There are a couple that we'd say that you maybe could lift that for, and 13th, as we'll talk about in April, is one of them.
Yeah, so this is kind of ends our examination over Black History Month of some key themes that come up in pop culture, particularly in TV and films that we love to talk about and love to watch all the time, avid consumers of films and documentaries that we are. But the idea of examining the relationship between Black people in this country, particularly in the criminal justice system, is a very, very important one. We've seen some criminal justice reform take place over the last number of years, but as a personal advocate for ending mass incarceration, I cannot encourage you enough to pick one of these films and watch them, and learn more about an experience that you might not have known. Walk a few feet in somebody else's shoes in a story that's not yours. That's the beauty of this great democratization, is we can access all of these stories, and it makes us more empathetic, more culturally aware humans. And that is, one of the great purposes and effects of art, which we love to talk about. But I think that's all we've got. Go watch some films. We will be back late next week, continuing into March, which is now Irish American History Month, doing a very similar thing and talking about some key themes in Irish made and not Irish made or Irish themed films throughout the years. So it should be maybe a little bit more lighthearted, except for our video on conflict.
It will be more soapboxy. It will definitely be more soapboxy. If you have missed a good doctor's rant from our coverage of The Handmaid's Tale, good news, guys. Here comes March.
It's a coming.
It's coming.
We have some
feelings,
thoughts and feelings TM about the history of Irish film and the story of Irish experiences in film and television. So we'll see you guys then.
Bye.